Welcome back. So, as promised, it is Panic Index time. So, at the bottom, you've got the new, and this is a new magnet that I have indeed added to the board. This is the symbol of panic for today. It is Sylvester, famously, of course, from the cartoons with Tweety Bird and all that. I don't have a Tweety Bird magnet. Wish I did. And for teams that are perfectly happy, there's Michael Scott. So there you go, happiness. And for teams that are going through a rebuild and may not be entirely happy about it, there's Kevin from The Office being forced to eat broccoli. We all remember. Poor Kevin. All right, so we've got the 3 spots. I was thinking about adding a 4th, and I thought, it's too early in the season for all that. All right, so we're going to start things off. I got 4 piles here. I'll start off with this one. Nashville. Nashville, I think, has to be right in the region of panic, right? For the Nashville Predators, this has been a disastrous start to the season. And I mentioned in recent videos, it does make you wonder. David Poile's been there the entire time. Might it be time for Nashville to look in another direction when it comes to leadership? It's a question we've never really had to ask with Nashville, but if things keep trending this way, that could happen. For New Jersey, New Jersey, there's no way they can be anything but here, right? It's a 7-3 start. It's been a remarkable run for them. I did the video today where I talked about teams off to fast starts, and so for New Jersey, it's been quite the ride thus far, right? So we'll see how far that goes and what they're able to do. But yeah, New Jersey's got to be happy. The New York Islanders, I'll put them above the line, so there's no panic. There's happiness. I'm not going to have them as jubilant as, say, New Jersey, but yeah, the Islanders, after what was kind of a slow start and looking like, it might be another missed season for them or lost season for them, they've recovered nicely. So the New York Islanders sitting at above that line. For the New York Rangers, you know what? I'm going to put the Rangers right on the line. It feels like they've been really up and down so far this year. It could go either way. I still like their odds of not only making the playoffs, but going pretty far in the playoffs. But yeah, there are some reasons to look at the Rangers and have a little bit of doubt right now. But it could be turning around. They do have the back-to-back wins. So I'm going to put them right on the line, right? Just right on the line for now. Ottawa. I'm going to put Ottawa a little bit below the line. There's 2 reasons for this. One, the team's lost 3 in a row. The team also is now up for sale. And there's going to be that uncertainty that hangs over that for a while, where we're not sure who's going to buy it and what might happen, right? What's going to happen once that team sells? Is it going to be an Ottawa-based owner? Probably not. So if it's somebody who's based somewhere else, are we going to hear the speculation and the concern? Probably yes. So for Ottawa, a little bit below the line. 3 losses in a row will do that, I would think, in a season where they're supposed to be getting better. Philadelphia, it has been bizarre. I'm going to say Flyers fans right now. I'll put them right with the Islanders, and the Flyers fans are probably surprised at how competitive the Flyers have been and how amazing Carter Hart's been playing. Hart's been playing some of the best hockey he has in his young career thus far. And so, yeah, Philadelphia I think is just fine. Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, I'm going to put them down in the same area as Ottawa. The Penguins were expected to be pretty good and were really good to start the season, and then it's kind of crashed, right? So for Pittsburgh, you've got to have some concern. There's the 3-goal lead they lost last night. I don't have them in this. Everything is, falling apart kind of panic, but there's an issue, and we'll see how it goes. St. Louis, I'm going to put St. Louis down with Nashville. They won 3 in a row, and then they lost 5 in a row in regulation. This is not a recipe for success. So for St. Louis, we'll see if they're able to get things together. I think they can. I think they should. They should still be a playoff team, but these slow starts can be killer, and so we'll see if that is in fact the case for them. All right, let's go to Columbus. Columbus got to be right down in here, in that Columbus was supposed to be better this year. This was supposed to be a pretty good year for Columbus. Let's see if I can get... Yeah, that looks better. But Columbus, it was supposed to be better for them this year, and it's not. And so, yeah, Columbus, if anything, looks worse than they did last year, and that's definitely problematic for management, for fans, definitely. Dallas, Dallas had some downs recently. They're pretty pretty good right now. You know what? I'll even put Dallas right here. The 5-2 win over LA. I'll put them not right next to the Michael Scott. Everything is wonderful, happy, but just beneath. They did lose 3 out of 4 going into last night's game that they won over the Kings. So I do hope that Dallas has really and truly righted the ship. They've got some good scoring going on. There is, of course, the concern without Jake Ottinger, what happens? That is absolutely a concern. But Wedgwood was pretty good last night. So I'm going to leave Dallas where they are. Detroit, I think there's, you know what? I'm going to hedge. I'm going to put them on the line. The Detroit Red Wings got off to a really good start. The last team in the NHL to take a regulation loss. And since then, it's just been kind of, I don't know. It really just hasn't been what I think they had hoped it would be this season. And that happens. One thing that I've talked about in videos too is it can be really hard to tell when a team's going to break through and that rebuild is finally over, right? That can be the most frustrating part. It was frustrating for Edmonton for years. It's been frustrating in Buffalo for a long time. And so, yeah, and Vancouver too, right? Although Vancouver's never officially acknowledged they needed a rebuild. But for Detroit, we'll see how things go from here, but right on the line for me. Edmonton, yeah, things are pretty good in Edmonton. I'll put Edmonton up against New Jersey right there because things are going pretty well. After a couple of iffy starts here and there along the way, they seem to have got themselves together. The scoring is really, it's regular Edmonton levels, right? McDavid looks like he's decided, well, I should score 50 this year, and nobody can stop him. Draisaitl's been scoring points right, left, and center, and Evander Kane knows exactly where to stand in front of the net in order to tip pucks, knows how to net drive, knows all that fun stuff about goal scoring, and so there's a chance he scores 50 as well. We'll see how many 50 goal scorers we have in the NHL, but we could see 2, maybe even 3 with the Oilers if Draisaitl gets hot too. Florida. Now, coming out of that loss against Arizona, it feels like Florida, you know what, I'm going to put Florida actually down here. Florida has seemed off. They have seemed off for a while. This season, it's just not the same as last year, and I'm not sure what's changed so dramatically. I mean, you lose Huberdeau and you pick up Tkachuk, that changes your team. And it's not about whether or not Tkachuk's producing. It's just, it feels like the team's different. Maybe losing Uyghur off the blue line in that deal, on top of Ekblad being out with injury now. Maybe it's blue line maybe that's what was driving some of that transition game last year that's missing this year. But yeah, at this time last year I was talking about how unstoppable Florida looked, and right now they do kind of look stoppable, right? So for Florida, it's been a bit of a rough start. For the Kings, it depends on the day. I'm going to put the Kings right on the line. They're a 500 team. They're 6-6. They look fantastic against the Blues, and then they don't look very good against Dallas the very next night. So with the Kings, it really has been an up and down situation. The good news is they're still a good team. They should get this figured out. There is some concern regarding the goaltending side of things for the Kings, but overall they should figure this out. Minnesota. I'm going to put them on the positive side because it feels like Minnesota's starting to figure it out. They're starting to get it together. They're a game above 500, and it does feel like after a relatively slow start that they're getting their stuff together. So for Minnesota, very likely a playoff team. I'd be kind of surprised if they weren't. That being said, of course, we're now in a league where 16 out of 32 teams miss the playoffs. Good teams will miss the playoffs, and that should kind of be the point of the playoffs. You should have to be pretty darn good to make it. We just for many years had it where mediocre teams would make it, so now there's all this. Well, they should expand the playoffs. No, don't. It's the one thing that I agree with Bettman on. Don't expand the playoffs. 16 teams, leave it at 16 teams. Montreal's playing with house money. Even though they're 5-5, I don't think Montreal fans are upset at all. I don't think this is about Montreal making the playoffs either. I think this is just about them having fun and the creative offense that's being driven by Caulfield and Suzuki. Yes, they need somebody to play on that line with them, but yeah, Montreal's in pretty good shape. So I think that for Habs fans, the future's pretty bright because they should still miss the playoffs. This should still be a team that falls out of playoff contention, and it's all right because You've got a good young team. You've got all these draft picks. Nothing wrong with, in the year of Connor Bedard, trying to get Connor Bedard. All right, Anaheim. Anaheim, this was expected. Doesn't mean people enjoy it, thus the Kevin eating broccoli. So this is not panicked. This is expected that they would be bad. It doesn't make it easier to watch. Doesn't make it easier to follow. And for the Ducks, it's been a while now since they were a competitive playoff team, so this has to be a frustrating setback that this year they kind of look worse than they did last year. But I think that's kind of with what Pat Verbeek's put together here. And again, no GM's going to come out and say, look, we really just want Connor Bedard, okay? But there's kind of that feeling with Anaheim. Arizona, it's interesting because I don't know that I would say there's no reason for panic with Arizona. They were supposed to be bad. I don't know that fans are going to be upset with the fact that they're bad. I'll put them down here. I'm not going to put them at the same level as Anaheim, but this was expected. Now, they win that game over Florida last night. I don't know that they had any business winning it, but they did. Thanks, Carl Vamelka. But, yeah, for the Arizona Coyotes, again, playing with house money and showing themselves to be competitive at home. I think that for fans coming out of Mullet Arena, having watched games there, I think they're going to say what a good experience it was. And good word of mouth is important, especially when a public referendum may decide whether or not the building gets put where the Coyotes want it to and where it would benefit the city or whether it ends up getting placed somewhere else. Boston. I can't put Boston anywhere but here. That would be ridiculous. Now, again, Boston was expected to be in the mix. They were expected to be a pretty good team, but 9-1 is ridiculous. That is crazy. I had no idea anything like that was coming from Boston. The remarkable comeback win last night, just the latest. And so, yeah, Boston fans, I think, are legitimately excited right now. I'm tempered in that excitement. I'm not thinking, yay, Stanley Cup, here we come, because if they win 9 out of every 10 games, they're going to end up with like 72 plus wins. But on the other side of it, the thing with that is President's Trophy winners never win the Stanley Cup. So that's the problem with winning all your games. Lose a few so you can at least not be first overall so you're allowed to win the Stanley Cup. Buffalo fans, if I'd done this a week ago, it might have been a little bit different. But yeah, Buffalo's pretty excited. I mean, that slaughter at the hands of that they gave to the Detroit Red Wings absolutely helps to cement their spot at the top of the board. For Buffalo, it's going to be a very interesting November. We'll see whether or not they stay in this position for the next couple of weeks. But yeah, so there you go. Calgary was at the top. Calgary right now, I would put them down with Minnesota. The loss against Seattle last night, concerning, sure. Is there a reason to panic if you're a Flames fan right now? Not really. I mean, I guess on some level, you're looking at Vegas and Edmonton right now lining themselves up to potentially be the top 2 teams in the division. And for the Flames, I don't think third place is a place that you want to stick around for too long. Because again, you're looking ahead to playoffs, and if it is a Battle of Alberta in the first round, and it could be, then being the road team, would that make any kind of a difference? We'll see. And of course, for the Flames, they would then be the team in the top 3 that's most vulnerable, being third and all, to being knocked out by a Kings team if they get hot, or Seattle, if Seattle manages to get enough points put together, and that's just a bewildering one to even say and be serious about. Carolina, I'm going to put Carolina right here with Dallas. I don't know how jubilant things are in Canesville at this point. The Canes have got a good record. I don't know that they've played as well as their record would show. I think there are some concerns there with Carolina, but in general, they're going to be fine. We know there should be top 2 in that division eventually, depending on whether or not New Jersey is willing to release their hold on first place. But Carolina's an excellent team. Really no need to be concerned at this point. Chicago, there's got to be some excitement around Chicago, at least on some level. And yet, I'm going to put them on the line because things have kind of started to fall as expected. And pretty soon I expect them to be down in this area where, they're suffering the losses. The fan base knows what's going on. It doesn't make it any easier any easier to take, but whatever, it's not a big deal. So yeah, Chicago, is definitely fighting the rebuild at this point. 4-4-2 isn't a great start, but it's better than what we had expected for Chicago. Colorado's a tough one. Colorado won the Stanley Cup. So you're 9 games into the season, and you're Colorado. Are you really concerned? No. Are you overly happy with the start? No. So they go on the line too. They go on the line as well. I don't think they're overly happy with the start to the season that they've had, but I don't see any reason for them to be panicky either. I think that Colorado is going to figure this out. They did it last year. Their first 10 games last year, I think they were 4-5-1. They won the Stanley Cup. So they're no strangers to underwhelming starts and turning those around. So we'll see if they do it again this year. Seattle. The Seattle Kraken, this is one that I waver a bit on, but I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to put them at the same level as the Islanders, Flyers, and Montreal. They're 5-4-2, which means they've won 5 out of 11, but they're 1 game above NHL 500, so it really depends. Are you glass half full, glass half empty? I think for Seattle, things look pretty good. They are definitely in a position to be one of the teams challenging for a wild card. There's the possibility, if the Flames do fall off further, that maybe Seattle could be looking at a chance to grab third place. As crazy as that sounds, sure, why not? Seattle right now, with their record and the way they're looking, this is the way that a lot of people predicted they would be last season. That they would be a good team, not necessarily great, probably not in the playoffs, but shouldn't be that far out. So this year they finally caught up to expectations from last season. The odd part is the expectations for this season were much lower, so just shows the difference an expectation can make. For San Jose, yeah, San Jose's right down here eating broccoli with Kevin. The San Jose Sharks, it's been expected start. That game between San Jose and Anaheim last night was brutal in that it kind of felt like neither team wanted it. It kind of felt like both teams were like, no, you guys take the 2 points. We're good. And so it was definitely a game that had a lot of goals in it. It was a 6-5 final in the shootout, but it was a tough watch at times, not going to lie. And I do expect that with both teams for the rest of this season and those California games to be a little bit tougher to watch. Just honesty from me on that one. It can be a tough watch, and last night's was definitely a good example of that. Tampa Bay, Tampa Bay's had an up and down start, but it feels like they're getting it together. So I'm going to put them with Calgary and Minnesota on the positive side. They're now 6-4. It definitely feels like last night was a Tampa Bay game, right? Where their special teams are pretty good. And they're, in that they got the power play goal. They didn't allow a power play goal. We won't talk about how many power play opportunities they had last night, but for Tampa Bay, it does feel like they're getting it back. That their game is coming around, and if they win 6 out of every 10 games throughout the season, they'll make the playoffs. So that's the point, right? Toronto. Well, I'm not going to have Toronto completely in the panic zone yet. But they're not too far from Sylvester. So I'm not going to have them down as low as Nashville, St. Louis, or Columbus, but they're not far off. If they lose against Philadelphia tonight, then all bets are off, especially if it's a regulation loss, if it's an ugly loss. If there's no way to argue that they're the better team, like if they lose the game 4-3, but the shots are like 50-26 for Toronto, then usually you win that game, right? And that's the thing that I often try to point out with power rankings too, where sometimes on a given night a team might lose, and I might say, I'm going to leave them where they are because they played well, they just didn't get the result. For Toronto, if that's the case tonight, they play well, they don't get the result, they should be fine, but we'll see how that goes. Vancouver, Vancouver's they're still down, they're still here, right down with Columbus, and it's remarkable how they had the 2-game winning streak and looked good, and then last night they're just back into all the same habits. Quinn Hughes could tell reporters after the game, here's what we did wrong, and named off every goal, how every goal went in their net, and kind of whose fault it was, or how that happens. So they're paying attention. Quinn Hughes is not running from the criticism leveled against the Canucks right now. And I don't think the Canucks generally have. They expect to turn it around. But also there's when you ask a player, you put a microphone in his face and go, do you expect to turn things around? Do you really want him to say, no? No, I think this is who we are. I think we're losers. Especially Bill over there. Bill, you got to get your crap together. So yeah, I think for Vancouver, this is an interesting position that they're in. I'm kind of the mind that making a trade right now is really difficult with the salary cap as it is. They might be better off just to say, you know what, this year sucks, and ride it out. And public confidence in them will be at an all-time low. The fan base would go nuts if they don't make any big moves, but I don't know. I don't know what they're going to be able to do. We'll see. I think the trades that they made to bring in Studnicka and Bear, I think that's about all they're able to do right now. I don't think there's a big move to be made because I keep saying, well, they could trade Besser, they could trade Horvath. They could, but at the same time, you look at the league and the cap situation, you realize they probably can't, not easily. And not without giving up more future assets. They don't want to give up future assets, right? So, yeah, the Canucks are in a tough spot. Vegas is right here. Vegas Golden Knights right now are playing like the Vegas Golden Knights from, and I don't know if I want to say the first season. There's a similar feeling to this team that it's just inevitable they're going to win, which is something I felt with the first season. But they're 9-2. So they're actually on a better pace than that team was that first year. It's not as surprising now as it was the first year. But yeah, for Vegas, there's no reason for them to have any upset about anything right now. Turns out not having Robin Leonard for the whole year, they're perfectly fine. Washington. I think with Washington, I'm going to put them down here with Florida. There's absolutely reason to be concerned. This is a team that's getting older. This is a team that's now dealing with a lot of injuries. This is a team that, and of course, those things can go together. Older players, probably easier for them to get injured. They're going to have bumps and bruises from previously in their career. Plus, it's tougher coming back, right? It takes a longer period of time. So, and I'm older, so I can say that. It does take longer to recover from things. So for the Washington Capitals, I think they're in a position right now where there are some teams that are overperforming expectations in the East. Makes it tougher for the Capitals to make the playoffs. Winnipeg Jets. So we end off with the Jets. I apologize to Jets fans. I didn't know which piles I was going to go through first. Turns out the Jets pile was last. I apologize. But for the Jets, I'm going to put them right here. Now, there is some concern with some of the underlying numbers with the Jets that maybe they're not playing as well as their record would indicate. And then, against Vegas, did they deserve a point? No. Thanks, Connor Hellebuck. But the record's pretty good. So while the record is good and they're not necessarily playing as well as you might want, as long as they fix the things that are wrong in their game, they should be just fine. If they don't, that's when you can come back and get concerned. So, and that could be tough. Again, we've seen that in previous seasons where teams are doing well, even though the underlying numbers would tell you they shouldn't be, and they don't fix the problems, and all of a sudden they're losing games. So we'll see what happens with the Jets, but there you go. That's my take on the relative levels of panic in the NHL. The only ones that I feel are really and truly panicked, Nashville, St. Louis, Columbus, Vancouver, with an honorable mention to the Toronto Maple Leafs. And enjoying their broccoli as much as one can when they're Kevin Malone. Anaheim, Arizona, and San Jose, all teams in the West. All teams that were expected to probably miss the playoffs and in all likelihood probably be pretty bad. And this is where we're at. So let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.